What's up everyone? Welcome back to DataZard. Yes, I know, I've been missing for a few months. Life happened and I had to step away for some personal reasons. But first of all, thank you. Seriously, thank you for sticking with me and being patient. But guess what? I am back and we are not slowing down this time. From now on, you will be seeing consistent, high value content dropping regularly. And that's not all. I'm launching a brand new series. And yes, you have guessed it right. It's around DBT, which is Data Build Tools. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and let's get back to building. This is DataZard, and we are just getting started. Let's go.
Now let us try to understand what is DBT and why do we need to use it. So DBT stands for Data Build Tools. And where does DBT fit in your tech stack? So if you look at your current tech stack, you might be doing ETL, which is extract, transform or load, or extract, load and transform, ELT. In this, DBT fits into this T part. It is only this T part which DBT handles, which means DBT is only responsible for doing transformations. It cannot extract, it cannot load. So these operations will need to be done by something else, but the transformation part is handled by DBT. So if you have tech stack like this is your raw data comes into first your data warehouse, and before this we have not added any transformations. Here we are going to apply our transformations, and which means here we have our DBT, and then we will have our BI tools or our serving layer. It could be BI tools, it could be going to machine learning models or anywhere else. So we are extracting from here, we are loading here, and then we are transforming using DBT, and then this is our serving layer. Serving layer as in where do we want to send this data to? Is it going to a BI tool or is it going to machine learning models, deep learning models? How is it being used? So DBT fits into transformation layer. Now let us take a very basic scenario and understand why DBT is needed. So suppose that you are working in a company which is selling shoes. Now this shoes company will have lots of data. Data could be in the form of orders data, it could be customers data, it could be payments data. So there are lots of data. I'm just taking these three for simplicity. Now all of this data would be sitting into a data warehouse. Now from this data warehouse, this could be connected to, let's say, Power BI dashboard, because marketing team is using Power BI. Then this could be connected to Looker dashboards because our sales team is using Looker, and then we could directly query it using SQL like CSMs or are asking analysts and they are writing direct SQL queries. Now let us say somebody wants to understand what is the total revenue of our orders. Now in order to get total revenue of orders, they first asked marketing team, and marketing team told that it is $1 million. Then they went to Looker team like the sales team, and sales team said it is 700K. They went to a CSM and asked what is the total revenue according to you, and they queried the data warehouse and they said it is 650K. Now this person got three different values of total revenue, and of course there would be just one value which is the actual truth. Now which one of these should be trusted? And first of all the question is why three different values? And this all comes down to when we are getting this raw data, and here we are doing analysis. Between this, in here we are doing lots of transformations, and because these transformations could be different for marketing team, sales team or CSM team, that's why they are getting three different values. Taking an example of a transformation, let's say the orders could be in different statuses like shipped, delivered, returned. These are three different statuses. Suppose that marketing team is interested in all the statuses. Sales team is only interested in delivered orders. And CSM some other type of orders. Let's say delivered and returned. So that is why they are adding different context to this orders data, which means different transformations to this orders data, which is why they are getting different values. Essentially, there is only one value for total revenue, but amongst these, which one is correct? What is the company-wide definition when anybody in the company asks what's the total revenue we are having right now? How do we have a standard definition? With this approach where DBT is not there, we cannot. But when it comes to DBT, we can have a standardized approach across the company and then do specialized use cases for marketing, sales, CSMs, etc. So all of this can be done by DBT. There are other scenarios as well. Let's look at them one by one to understand what used to happen before DBT, what are the causes of, what are the problems that approach is causing, and how DBT is fixing them. Let us first talk about transformations. Now these transformations, first is when DBT was not present. So these transformations, they would sit directly in the BI tool, or these could be stored in the form of .sql files, and the analyst would just run these files to query the data warehouse and get the answers. Now these .sql files, if they are stored in a common repository, then it's perfect, but most of the times they would be stored in individual repositories which are not shared, or they could be stored directly into the analyst laptop, which means it's not reusable. So the first problem that we encounter is it is not reusable. Second problem is with these SQL files, in one single file there would be a lot of things happening. Data cleaning would be happening here, then joining would be happening here, there could be aggregations which are happening here. So a lot is happening in one single file, which will make it difficult to read. So this is hard to read. Another problem when it comes to SQL transformations, hard to read, hard to debug, because there is a lot of things which are happening in one single file. So these are the problems when it comes to transformations. If DBT was used by the company, then how this all thing is fixed? With DBT, we build models in DBT, and don't worry if you don't understand these terminologies, we'll look at these one by one. I'm just trying to give you an overview of how things are working in DBT and how the problems which are faced by companies which are not using DBT are solved using DBT. So in DBT we build models, and these models, they are built in layers. How layers? So it could be possible that one model is only performing cleaning. There is another model where we are doing joining. Another model where we are doing aggregations. So these models, they are built in layers, which means we are not repeating any logic and we are reusing our models. So this is model M1, this is model M2, and this is model M3. So in M2 we are referencing M1, in M3 we are referencing M2. So we are reusing these models. So we have fixed this reusability problem. Also, these will be easier to read. How? Because there is only one kind of operation happening, so it is easier to understand what we are trying to achieve in each of these models. So here we are just doing cleaning, here we are just doing joining. I'm just taking this in very basic terms. We will explore how these models are formed later on. So these are built in layers. So this makes it easier to read and easier to debug, because if something is happening, let's say it is in aggregations, we don't have to touch joining and cleaning models, we just have to look at aggregations. So it makes it easier to debug as well. Now the second best functionality that DBT provides is in terms of version control. Now when DBT was not present, at that time, suppose that there is a BI dashboard, and in this dashboard something is not looking right, and an analyst has been asked to understand what is happening, and they have figured out that there is a bug. When they see a bug, they would just directly go into the BI dashboard, update the logic there, and that's how the numbers have been corrected. Now if you look at this process, so the problem is no review of what change they are doing. It could be a breaking change. So accidental breaking change is possible because they are directly going into the BI tool or directly updating their .sql file and running it to get the numbers. So they could be introducing accidental breaking change. Also, there is no history maintained, and because of this we cannot know how this SQL files version was previous to this or how this dashboard was looking previously. So there is no history maintained, and rolling back is a pain. So pain to roll back. Why? Because we don't have the previous version. When it comes to DBT, all of this can be fixed. So with DBT, SQL would live in Git, which means it is tracked. We can have full version history. So this is fixed using that. We can have reviews because the history is maintained, so we can have reviews. Whatever changes made in the current version, a senior data analyst can look at it and understand if it is right or not. So we can have reviews. Because we have full history maintained, we can do rollbacks easily. So we can go from version 2.1 to version 2.0 easily because we have this version readily available. And also it helps in better collaboration because reviews are possible, rolling back is possible. So all of this collaborative process can be done easily. So that's how DBT is helping to apply version control. Now we will see later stages how this is done, but at least we know for now that version control is possible with using DBT, which was not possible when we were not using DBT. Another good feature offered by DBT is data tests. So let's again go back to era where there was no DBT. In this case, there were no automated tests. So this was a problem. Why? Because how the data issues would be found, it's when somebody is looking at the dashboard and then they see that this number doesn't look right, and that's when they will contact the analyst to understand why this could be happening. So when the business would complain, that's when the analyst would know that something is wrong. Debugging would happen after the damage has already been done because the dashboard numbers are not right. So this leads to low trust in data because we don't know if the number that we are looking at is right or not. This would lead to constant firefighting because every time somebody will look at a dashboard, if they don't see things right, then you will have to drop everything and fix the dashboard first. So you're always in a firefighting mode. And also this would lead to silent data failures. If let's say you're getting data from somewhere and that source has changed their schema, then our dashboard might fail. So this might lead to silent data failures. With DBT though, how these are fixed is DBT offers tests that you can apply on the data. So at every stage of the pipeline, you're applying some tests, and using these tests, issues would be caught before they reach dashboard. So we can understand if something is a problem before that data goes into the dashboard. This leads to increase in the trust in numbers because we are catching failures before they are happening. And we will have fewer meetings where people are saying, why is this number wrong, or this data doesn't make sense. So this is how DBT is helping with tests capability. Next amazing feature offered by DBT is documentation. Now before DBT, so in no DBT era, all the documentation would live in somebody's head, like they know the entire logic, or it would sit in Confluence and also with outdated information. New hires would constantly be asking like, what does this column mean, or which table should I use for this particular analysis? So all of these questions would be asked. So the problem here is there is a lot of tribal knowledge. Slow onboarding because somebody will have to sit and answer all of these questions, and easy to misuse the data. So misuse of data is also easy. But with DBT, documentation is possible because it helps us to document things along with SQL. So we are just not writing the SQL, we are also documenting it. DBT auto generates table descriptions, column descriptions, data lineage graph. We will understand what data lineage is later on, but there is automated way to do documentation in DBT. There will always be up-to-date docs, so always up-to-date documentation is available. This helps in self-serve analytics because now the new starters can just read the documentation which is already up to date and understand what each table is doing, what each column is doing, and this leads to faster onboarding as well. So we are fixing all of these problems. Next, we can have consistent business logic. With DBT, so before DBT, each dashboard is defined to like their own matrix, their own way of defining what a revenue is, and that is why, like in the previous example, we were having 3 different values for revenues coming from 3 different dashboards. So then the team would be arguing like whose number would be correct. So the problem here is there is no single source of truth, no single source of truth. Another problem is there are conflicting reports, and this leads to loss in confidence in the data. But when it comes to DBT, then we can define the business logic in the DBT models. So, and these are defined just once. So business logic would be defined once in DBT models. This way it stays consistent across all the dashboards and people use the same tables, and there is one definition per matrix. There are not different definitions. So the resulting is we will have consistency across different tools. There would be fewer arguments about whose number is correct, and people will think that the data is more reliable. So it's fixing all of these problems just by defining business logic in one simple place. DBT also helps with dependency management. So with the current way of doing things where there is no DBT, suppose that there are multiple tables and these all form one particular dashboard. Now suppose that we are changing this particular table. Now suppose we are making a change in this table. It might be a breaking change, and because of which this dashboard will get affected. Without DBT, it is hard to understand what are the implications of changing tables, what will be the implications downstream. But when it comes to DBT, in DBT there are lineage graphs which explain that this particular model is dependent on, like this M2 model is dependent on this M1 model, and also it is fetched into M3 model. So M2 and M3 both are dependent on M1. So whenever we are making changes in M1 model, we have to be careful so that we don't break M2 and M3. So these type of lineages, they are already defined in DBT in a beautiful manner. They show it in the form of graphs, and this makes it easier to understand that if we make this change, then is it a safer change or not? What is the impact this is going to cause? And we can refactor things with confidence when it comes to DBT. But previous to this, we don't know what all tables were there, and it makes it hard. So essentially, if I have to summarize this, then I would say that the problems that were there before DBT and how DBT fixed it, or what DBT fixed, there was messy SQL everywhere previous to DBT, but with DBT, we can have structure in our SQL and everything is centralized. When there was no DBT, then there were minimal or no testing possible, but with DBT has its own built-in tests as well as custom data tests that can be applied on the data. No documentation was available previously, but with DBT we get auto-generated docs. There was matrix inconsistency before DBT, but with DBTs we have got a single source of truth. And before DBT there was a fear of change, but DBT's features like version control and lineage, it is very much possible to make these changes without breaking things downstream. If you look at this side carefully, these are all software engineering best practices. So we are just trying, with DBT, we are just trying to implement better data products by introducing best practices from software engineering into data engineering.
I hope I was able to explain you why we need to use DBT and why companies have started adopting DBT. Now in the next videos, we will be going through a project, and with that project, I will be able to explain to you how to create a DBT project and explain all its components and features. Thank you for watching. I will see you in my next one.